This is Thames from London. In 45 minutes, our local bulletin with Jane Corbin. But first, the national news from the studios of ITN at 10 o'clock.
Mrs. Thatcher says it's Argentina's last chance. Mr. Pym hears from Italy, no more sanctions. Mr. Foote says, let's debate and do nothing for 48 hours. The UN Secretary-General expects more talks. And the Canberra's consorts get ready. Good evening. The feeling is growing in London tonight that only a surprising concession by Argentina will stop an early British reinvasion of the Falklands. Talks are going on at the United Nations. One of Britain's main partners in Europe, Italy, for its own reasons, apparently does not want to keep up sanctions on Argentina. Mrs. Thatcher came out into Downing Street tonight after the news was heard that Italy, and perhaps others, are not going to continue sanctions. She knew France and Germany were still for sanctions, but she said she was very disappointed. Labour's leader, Mr. Foote, called for a further debate in the Commons and a 48-hour delay before there's any landing in the Falklands. There have been no reports of fighting in the South Atlantic tonight. The Prime Minister was asked on independent local radio today if it were now Argentina's last chance.
I think it may be. After all, we've been negotiating now for about 6 weeks. I've looked at 6 sets of proposals and tried to put our view on each. They've got nowhere. And the fact is that I feel that if the Argentines had really wanted to withdraw, that if they'd really wanted to obey the Security Council resolution, we should have seen some sign by now. But, you know, the task force is there. It's being very active. You saw the result of that commando raid. And one just hopes that that will have some influence on the junta in Argentina and perhaps get a settlement where what had happened before wouldn't.
There's just under an hour to go now before common market sanctions against Argentina expire, and Britain's EEC partners haven't yet decided whether to renew them. The foreign ministers are meeting in Luxembourg, and it's looking as if the decision may go against Britain. Sam Hall reports.
Mr. Pym arrived for the Common Market Foreign Ministers meeting just 6 hours before the trade sanctions against Argentina were due to expire. The Foreign Secretary, in a grim mood, said nothing, and there were strong indications even then that the whole sanctions issue was about to fall apart. The discussions on sanctions were running in tandem with some pretty tough bargaining on the vexed question of how much Britain should pay into the common market budget. And although Britain denied any link, it was suggested that the price for sanctions would be a far more flexible approach to the budget problem. 2 hours later, the meeting broke up so that some of the ministers could consult back with their governments. Mr. Pym was not wholly despairing, but it soon became clear that the Italians had threatened to invoke what is known as the Luxembourg veto, a device which enables a country to avoid a unanimous vote if it's a matter of national importance. And sanctions in Italy are an issue which could endanger the coalition government. So although hope is not quite out, the chances of any kind of unity are slim indeed. It means that anti-common market feeling in Britain is likely to grow, and it is a serious blow to common market credibility. Only a month ago, the common market countries were expressing complete unity. Now that has all gone. So it is a stunning blow to Britain, who wanted the enormous international value of unity. And it is the bad message which Mr. Pym did not want to be signalled back to Argentina. Sam Hall, News at 10 in Luxembourg.
Well, tonight's news from Luxembourg is a serious setback for the government, though not necessarily a catastrophic one. After having made so much of the common market's united and remarkably speedy support in the early days of the crisis, it'll be particularly galling for the Prime Minister to see that support falling away once the going gets a bit rough. It's understood in government circles here that the Italians do have a special problem, with political pressure from the Italian Socialist Party and the fact that 40% of Argentines are of Italian descent. Mr. Pym has tried hard in the past with some very flattering words to coax them along, but it doesn't seem to have worked. But Mrs. Thatcher will be far less understanding about the Irish and about Mr. Hockey, who has a crucial by-election coming up, and the Danes if they desert her too. There is still some hope in Whitehall tonight that a package can still be rescued in Luxembourg, either by letting the dissenting countries reserve their position, or perhaps by letting the whole thing come to a vote, or perhaps by announcing that the other countries will all take suitable national measures, though this will take time. Mrs. Thatcher, however, will take considerable comfort from the fact that President Mitterrand told her today at their meeting in London that French support for Britain over the Falklands is still quite firm, as is that of the West Germans. This despite the fact that Mr. Mitterrand's patience has been very sorely tried over Britain's refusal to do a deal over the problem of our common market cash payments. But the loss of the united support of the common market countries means that Mrs. Thatcher is under even more pressure now as she assesses the chances of a diplomatic solution. This evening, the Prime Minister gave her radio interview before she'd heard the news from Luxembourg. But even then, she made it clear that the talking at the United Nations would not be allowed to drag on. Peter Allen of IRN asked her how any time limit would occur.
Well, it occurs through the Secretary-General of the United Nations, who is being very, very active indeed, a person of total integrity. And it just depends how long he thinks he can go on. My guess is that we shall know this week whether we're going to get a peaceful settlement or not.
This week, that really is the deadline, is it? Because we
Well,
seem
not
to have been saying this for a long time.
I think we shall know this week. These are the sixth set of proposals. You would think that if the Argentines wanted a peaceful settlement, they'd have taken more steps than they have towards one. The question is, do they want one or not?
The Prime Minister making it quite clear there that Sir Anthony Parsons does have a specific brief to end Argentina's playing for time at the UN. Sir Anthony, who flew out this morning on Concorde, will almost certainly ask Senor Perez de Cuellar, the UN Secretary-General, to state his proposals formally as the best means of finding out, as the Prime Minister put it, whether the Argentines really want a peaceful solution or not, by forcing from them a definite yes or no. Well, tonight the diplomatic process got underway again in New York, and Trevor McDonald has been following the latest moves there.
Back in New York after his talks in London, Sir Anthony Parsons headed almost directly for another UN meeting. This is how he assessed the mood of the inner cabinet in London.
I don't think there's any change in the mood of the cabinet particularly. We all realise we're up against very difficult problems, and that, I don't think anybody considers on any side that this round of negotiations can go on indefinitely.
Is there now a time limit, sir?
No, but I think, as I said before I went away, we're obviously talking in terms of weeks, days, not weeks. I mean, that was clear enough when I went away. That hasn't changed.
The British mission at the United Nations was being unusually tight-lipped today about the nature of the instructions Sir Anthony Parsons has brought back from London. But what is not in doubt is that time is now the dictating factor. Throughout last week, when Britain was patiently negotiating, Sir Anthony Parsons agreed that things were taking a little longer than he'd anticipated. Now, as Mrs. Thatcher herself has said, the talks must end this week, and the War Cabinet has told Sir Anthony so. Mrs. Thatcher and her ministers would have come to that decision principally because after all the talking, so little progress has been made towards finding a settlement. To achieve a ceasefire, Britain is insisting that Argentine troops leave the Falklands. Argentina wants the British Navy to go back to Portsmouth. After 2 weeks, it's been impossible to work out a phased withdrawal on both fronts acceptable to both countries. On the question of the interim administration of the islands, Britain wants the locally elected Falklands Council to have a voice in how the islands' affairs are run. Argentina wants the UN to do the job alone. And on the vital matter of sovereignty, there's still considerable ambiguity. Britain wants negotiations without a stated prejudgment of their outcome. Argentina maintains that sovereignty must be Argentina's goal. So with so little movement on such fundamental questions, it now looks as though Mrs. Thatcher, who was never very enthusiastic about the United Nations anyhow, has said enough is enough, and she's told Sir Anthony Parsons so. Trevor McDonald, News at 10, New York.
Labour's leader, Mr. Michael Foot, has written to Mrs. Thatcher tonight to ask for another debate in the Commons. It would be the 6th since the Argentine invasion of the Falklands, and a delay of up to 2 days more before there's any British landing. Mr. Foot says it would be intolerable if the move were made to full-scale military operations without the House having the chance to judge for itself what was the nature of the diplomatic settlement available. The Social Democrat, Mr. Roy Jenkins, said some Conservatives talked as if war were desirable. This is dangerous nonsense, he said. Such an approach will not regenerate the nation, but deeply divide it. Mr. Jim Slater, the General Secretary of the National Union of Seamen, said he welcomed his union's vote for a landing in the Falklands if diplomacy fails. He said, "No one can carry on serving in those terrible conditions forever." Mr. Dennis Howell, president of the clerical union Apex, said he preferred an economic blockade, but we have got to face the fact that the United Nations does not have its own peacekeeping force which can take over. And Barnes's Labour MP, Mr. Roy Mason, criticised his local party and the miners' president, Mr. Arthur Scargill, who voted to recall the task force. Mr. Mason said, "I can't think it right we should give in to a damnable military junta."
The Ministry of Defence has revealed that 2 British helicopters crash-landed before the retaking of South Georgia last month. There were no casualties. The Ministry says it kept quiet about the incident for operational reasons. And after the weekend's commando raid on the Pebble Island airstrip, British casualties were 1 soldier with a foot injury and 1 with concussion. The task force remains on permanent watch for Argentine air attacks. Our reporter Michael Nicholson saw the fleet come to full alert today.
For the past few days since the last Argentinian air attack when British missiles brought down 3 A4 fighter bombers, it has been quiet in the air around us. Then this afternoon, just before 1 o'clock British time, we went suddenly into Action Station's Air Raid Red Alert. That means something has been picked up on the task force battle radar. We were expecting an air attack. Pairs of Sea Harriers waiting on the flight deck of HMS Hermes, their pilots sitting in closed cockpits at 3 minutes alert, were sent up to intercept. The guns of the task force were manned, their missile systems were put into track, and the ships broke away quickly from fleet formation into their separate battle groupings. For 15 minutes or more we waited, sweating it out, waiting for the ships on the edge of our battle group, we call them our pickets, to identify the intruders. Then, just as suddenly as the alert began, it ended. Red alert turned to yellow. Whoever, whatever it was on its way to us, had turned away. And with a thank you very much from all of us here. The ships of the task force have been busy these past few days, seeking helicopters with underslung loads beneath them, have been flying between the frigates, destroyers, carriers and supply ships, ferrying and redistributing tons of food, weapons, ammunition and troops. It has also been the day for repairs and weapon assessment. The destroyer, damaged in the Argentinian air attack some days ago, has now been repaired. She was alongside us today, refueling less than 100 feet away, and I could see quite clearly the patches around the holes in her sides. It seems the entire fleet has contributed to her repairs. A welder was flown in from one ship, engineers and shipwrights from others. She now carries the trademark of combat, but she is backing action. Other ships have also been carrying out test firing of their guns and their missile systems. To the question, why all this? A senior naval officer replied, "We are making every possible preparation, and it makes good military sense to check all systems now." Michael Nicholson, News at 10, with the British task force off the Falkland Islands.
The cruise liner Canberra, which has taken the main body of the assault troops towards the Falklands, is heavily guarded by warships. She has defences of her own, a number of anti-aircraft guns fitted since she was requisitioned, but task force ships play the chief role in looking after her. We just got this report, filmed a week ago, from Jeremy Hands in the Canberra.
It was, if nothing else, a welcome break from the hectic Canberra routine. The Type 21 frigate that came alongside was one of the guard ships looking after the amphibious force, and one of the ways she can guard is by using her 4.5-inch gun with pinpoint accuracy, even in the heaving swell of the South Atlantic. The range was only short and the ammunition just for practice, but for the troops in Canberra it was a heartening sight. And as the frigate's crew came out to get a look at us, noisy greetings were exchanged via both ships' horns. And then the frigate put her 2 Concorde engines into gear and headed off back on patrol, taking the full force of the ocean in her stride and quite a bit of it over the bow. Back on Canberra, some of the friendly inter-unit rivalry was given a chance to let off steam in a sports competition. The 3 major units of Marines and paratroopers had to fulfill a lot of boasts made over the last few weeks against each other and the minor units, and even the ship's crew of Canberra. The tug of war was one of the main events, and one well suited to proving if all the physical training of the last weeks was paying off. What the ship's crew lacked in style, they certainly made up for in enthusiasm. But in the end, as expected, it was one of the commando units who came out victorious, leaving the others with a lot of hurt pride and several blisters. The paratroopers claimed that the 10,000 metres was the blue-ribboned event, as they knew they had the best chance of winning it. 26 laps round the promenade deck was the course, not made any easier by the ship rolling or the sea spray coming aboard. The wife of a laundryman from the ship's crew gave her husband some vocal support, which obviously worked as he came in a surprising 3rd. But the paras were as good as their word and took the first 2 places. At the prize giving, the Royal Marines were overall winners, although the paras are determined to get their revenge sooner or later. But first, there's a lot more serious work to be done. Jeremy Hans, British Television News, aboard the Canberra in the South Atlantic.
The Russians have just launched one of their giant spy satellites, Cosmos 1365, which will pass over the Falklands twice a day. Aboard, it has a nuclear power plant, identical to the one that crashed in Canada in January 1978. The nuclear reactor powers a sophisticated radar system that can detect ships through the heaviest cloud. Its detailed information can be relayed back to the Soviet Union within half an hour. The Americans have also adjusted the orbits of 2 top-secret Keyhole 11 satellites operated by the CIA so that they cross the Falklands when the sun is low on the horizon. In this way, the shadow ships and any buildings erected by the Argentines on the Falklands can be seen clearly.
The Argentine Economy Minister, Senor Roberto Aleman, said today that they'd have no problem financing their foreign debt, though it's bigger than Poland's. He said Argentina would shortly be selling a large grain crop, usually sold to Russia, and could also borrow from the International Monetary Fund. But it's not all quite like that. One of President Galtieri's horses was put up for auction today to raise money for a war fund. The horse, a 3.5-year-old show jumper, is said to have made £5,000. It's been Navy Day in Argentina, commemorating a victory over the Spanish fleet in 1814. Ken Rees saw the ceremonies.
Admiral George Anaja sings in tribute to his men at a Navy Day ceremony. A member of the 3-man ruling junta, he's also chief of a fighting service which has so far suffered the most in the conflict with Britain. This is usually a day for reflecting on ancient glories, but today the mood was somber. In a short but direct speech, the Admiral said, "We stick to the West, but only to a West where arrogance and feudalistic tendencies are not allowed to prevail. We want peace, but we march towards victory." Later, in a rare public appearance together, the 3 members of the junta attended a mass for the dead. Despite rumours of squabbles in the past, they now show total unity. President Galtieri was alongside his lifelong friend, Admiral Anaja, a strong supporter of the Falklands invasion. The Air Force Chief, Lamidoso, was said to be less hawkish. Behind them in the congregation, Foreign Secretary Costa Mendes. The ruling junta knelt in prayer. They know that the events of the next few hours or days will determine their future as leaders. For now, the public are with them. The Church, too, gives official blessing to the government's action, and unity between the two has never been stronger than now. President Galtieri left the church, refusing to answer questions about the crisis. People applauded his appearance. There were shouts of "Viva la Patria," "Long live the fatherland." I asked the President if, at this late hour, he was still hoping for peace. He nodded and smiled, but would say nothing more.
2 British archbishops have gone to tell the Pope, "You must come to Britain." A report from Rome next. Plus, the old lady who found herself blown out of her home. And the round-the-world sailor who's beaten almost all the records. That's in a couple of minutes.
There's a difference at McDonald's. Eggs are cooking here today. Muffins buttered, bacon bacon's cooking, cheese is melting. Egg McMuffin, that's the difference at McDonald's, here to stay.
For a free demonstration of the Xerox desktop reduction copier, call Freephone 2279 now.
Britain's fastest parcels go from Exeter to Edinburgh, Leeds to London, through to Cardiff, Birmingham to Brighton, and you'll find that you can get them there today. Red Star same day. Wellington to Wigan, or from Norwich to Nuneaton, Wolverhampton to Southampton, pull out all the stops and get them there today. Red Star same day.
Harry Trubshaw always rented a smart car from Hertz whenever he went on a business trip, whilst Hamish McWeeny, who scorned such indulgence, used public transport. Of course, McWeeny wasn't to know his 4 second-class returns from Newcastle to London actually cost about £130 more than going by Hertz. And the moral of the story is, when it hurts you to spend it with Hertz. No one makes renting a car easier.
Peru, summer 1981. A 10,000-kilometer ordeal for Samsonite luggage. Samsonite, the strength you need to travel.
Lenthéric make choosing perfume easier now with this new sampler set containing 6 fine fragrances for only 75p. Choose from fragrances like Tweed, Panache and New Mystique. Then get your money back when you purchase the full-size Lenthéric product of your choice. The Lenthéric sampler set makes choosing perfume easy.
The Roman Catholic archbishops of Liverpool and Glasgow will see the Pope tomorrow in Rome. They'll try to persuade him not to cancel his visit here later this month because of the Falklands conflict. Here, preparations for the 6-day visit are well underway. At St George's Cathedral in Southwark, they've been rehearsing the music which should greet the Pope when he arrived on the first day of his visit. It's I Was Glad by Parry. But in spite of all the preparations, the visit now appears to be in jeopardy. Alastair Stewart met the 2 archbishops when they flew in to make their last-minute appeal.
On the outskirts of the city. They won't see the Pope until tomorrow, but are promised an audience. As personal delegates of Cardinal Hume of England and Cardinal Grey of Scotland, they comprise a top-line delegation. Waiting to meet them, the Pope's English press secretary and an official of the English College in Rome.
We feel that there has been such reaction and distress felt that we owe it to our people to make this quite plain out here.
When you say distress, how is that measured? How deep is that feeling of concern that the visit may not go ahead?
Initially, absolute incredulity. People could not believe it. And when they have realized that, yes, it is serious, that there is a very real danger that circumstances might force the Holy Father to take such a decision, then tremendous distress, not only because of all the preparations they've made, but because of the great importance that they attach to the vision, the great devotion they have to the person of the Holy Father. And of course, for many of them, there will be no other opportunity in their lives to see him.
Archbishop Winning, it's obviously a pretty awesome task. How do you rate your chances of success?
I'm really not a betting person, but I think 50-50 anyway. The Holy Father's very understanding. There is apparently, he's still very concerned about the effect that this will have on the Catholics of Britain, and I'm certain we'll get a good hearing, and well, we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Here, Merseyside householders whose homes were destroyed when 5 council blocks were blown up nearby say they warned that their homes weren't strong enough to take the blast. Nearly 100 people were made homeless when concrete, glass and iron from the demolished flats showered down on houses in Tower Hill, Kirby, yesterday. The demolition companies say the houses were in poor condition, and they're trying to help to rehouse some of the people.
I think it's disgusting. It's a disgrace. It's absolutely disgrace. It is. I'm telling you. I didn't expect to come back to me poor house. I didn't expect to come back to me. I didn't expect it at all.
The Chelsea Flower Show, the world's most famous florist shop window, had its royal preview today. The Queen saw roses commemorating the past and a 4-leaf clover, looking forward to a lucky future. The Duke of Edinburgh saw the funny side, but Prince Charles was caught slightly off guard when someone offered him a bouquet of flowers. Rose of the year is the Mountbatten rose. The Queen and the Queen Mother both have 12 bushes of it. Every time a Mountbatten rose plant is sold, a donation will go to the Soldiers, Sailors and Airmen's Family Association. Lord Mountbatten was its president for many years.
Tonight's soccer in England in the First Division, 2 failed hopefuls, Ipswich 2, Spurs 1, and in Division 2, Cardiff 2, Luton already on the way up 3, Cardiff on the way down.
A 40-year-old surveyor from Newcastle upon Tyne has become the first person to sail alone around the world in both directions. David Scott Cowper sailed back to Plymouth today after a 31,000-mile journey. He has housemaid's knee after being thrown onto the deck by 60-foot waves round Cape Horn, but he's set 3 world sailing records. Jeremy Greenaway of Television South saw his triumphant return.
Like so many other lone sailors, David Scott Cowper found the last 100 miles to Plymouth among the most tedious. He was virtually becalmed for 4 days. But there was a rousing welcome for the Newcastle surveyor, who was making a habit of encircling the world by boat. This is his second lone voyage, and it's given him a fistful of records. There was a traditional welcome for him from the city's Lord Mayor as he landed on steps once trod by Sir Francis Chichester.
That's very, very kind of you indeed. You know, I'm absolutely delighted. That's a fantastic welcome when you see all these people there.
It's been a fantastic voyage. You know, do it twice. It really has been incredibly.
Imagine might be for the first time, but second time that gets a little thin.
Champagne and the cheering crowds made it a heady moment for Cowper, his small son and wife Caroline, relieved to welcome him back a second time.
Well, it's marvellous to have him over again. Such a relief, as you can imagine, to see him sail in. Fantastic moment, and I can tell you it's a load off my mind. It's an enormous relief. And I have no idea what he's up to next. Absolutely no, I can't imagine.
And those records, first loner in each direction, fastest both ways, first round all capes east to west. And there isn't much left after that. Jeremy Greenaway, 4 News at 10 in Plymouth.
The mood is growing tonight that the task force will soon re-invade the Falklands, though Labour's leader, Mr Foot, wants a 48-hour delay. We'll also have, very shortly, more news from the common market about sanctions. And what would a landing in the Falklands mean now, after 6 weeks of the task force at sea? And what are the pressures inside the Conservative Party telling the Prime Minister that a landing is essential? In a couple of minutes.
As folks gathered round for the fair's main event, a porcupine-jawed stranger strolled up to the tent. Folks gasped at the newfangled razor they saw. It were a twin-blade pivot-head Gillette Contour. Its pivot head angles over each crease and hill, and if the first blade don't get it, then the next one will. Contour! With extra weight and pivot head, it fast clears any chin, but the judge then said speed alone don't win. So other judges then checked his chin's condition, which they figured best done with the aid of some kissing. Contour! Gillette Contour!
The best Gillette yet.
You can trust the dealers in Car Buyer. Car Buyer, in your newsagents now, only 20p.
If you have an ordinary credit card, you also have a spending limit. And in business, that can soon get eaten up.
There's a flight to Rome in 50 minutes.
Excuse me? I hope everybody enjoyed the meal.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's 3 nights extra. That's 1,040,000 lira.
I have to check our credit card.
If only he'd had a diner's card. It isn't an ordinary credit card, it's an international charge card and doesn't have a preset spending limit to restrict you. So whatever your travel and entertainment needs,
How do you like to pay, Mr. Travers? Diner's card, okay.
it does you credit. If we told you that a certain oil company wanted to push a pipeline through this lovely Welsh valley, a pipeline which would stretch for 78 miles across the countryside, which would cut a swathe 30 yards wide, which would mean digging 7 feet down into the earth, sending bulldozers into the Snowdonia National Park, you would probably, quite rightly, be very alarmed. You might, with good reason, form a protest committee, ask for a special inquiry, write in the strongest terms to your MP. You needn't worry. This is the valley after, not before, Shell laid its pipeline. Work began only after Shell had consulted the local people. And when work finished, we restored the valley, as you can see, to its natural beauty. Can we develop the industry we need without destroying our countryside? You can be sure of Shell.
News has just come in from Luxembourg to change the original reports tonight. Our correspondents there report that all the common market, including Italy, have now agreed to renew sanctions against Argentina, though for just 1 week. Originally, they were imposed for a month. Our diplomatic editor says that the announcement is plainly the result of very heavy and successful lobbying by the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Pym. Earlier, the Italians had said that they would veto a unanimous decision to renew sanctions, but at the last minute, the Italians apparently decided to stay their hand.
Just 45 minutes before the sanctions against Argentina were due to expire, a British spokesman announced that the Common Market foreign ministers had reached a decision to renew sanctions for 7 days. In the circumstances, this is a big victory for Mr. Pym because only a few hours earlier, the Italians had threatened to invoke the Luxembourg veto, which would have enabled them to block the vote on the grounds that it was a matter of national importance. Tonight's decision was reached unanimously. Even so, though, Mr. Pym had asked for 1 month. For most partners, this will be arranged under Article 113, under which the sanctions were originally imposed a month ago. 2 countries, Ireland and Italy, have agreed under Article 225 that there will be no distortion of trade. A British spokesman said the essential point was that the community remained united on the proposition that at least for the next 7 days there will be no imports from Argentina into common market countries. Sam Hall, News at 10 in Luxembourg.
But what will happen in the Falklands in the next 7 days? Here's Rear Admiral Martin Weems, who is a naval expert. Rear Admiral, do you think that now naval and military considerations dictate an early landing?
I think we're as ready as we can ever hope to be. The next thing is the weather. And I think the weather is probably the biggest of the holdbacks or the go-ahead. If we understand the political situation and permission is given, I'm quite sure whether it is a full-scale landing or whether it's continuation of raids ashore to cut down the opposition before the landing, but I'm sure action is now the thing that the military would like.
Now, supposing the Prime Minister were to give the order for a landing, would that take place immediately or would there be a delay because of the weather or because of some other consideration?
Yes, I think the timing, because we are trying to get in without bloodshed or without a bloodbath or with the least casualties, weather must be used on our side. And it doesn't necessarily have to be frightfully good weather or frightfully bad weather. It has to be favourable for what is planned.
Now, do you think the Rear Admiral in charge of the task force has learned anything very considerable about the Argentine forces that he didn't know before he set sail?
Oh, I should think a very great deal, yes.
Now, what in particular?
I think, from all accounts, as far as I read the situation, there has been excellent intelligence and all moves up to date. Now, these are multi-source. And I was at sea 3 years ago in the same sort of situation. I had not studied the Argentinian armed forces. I'm sure he has. And locally, quite clearly, he's got first-class intelligence.
Now, do you think the Argentines have got more men ashore than we had thought? What do you think of their air power now?
I can't put a number to, but I have a feel between 9,000 and 10,000. I cannot see the point in having any more. The worry has been the air battle. That worry continues. There is a demonstrable gap in our defences. We've learned to live with it, perhaps. I think locally, this latest raid, with its toll of aircraft, is immensely helpful for any form of further landing, big or small.
So you would be confident about a landing?
Yes, I believe we are ready. I believe totally in the people there, professionally.
Thank you. And now one of the Conservative backbenchers who's been encouraging Mrs. Thatcher to take an early decision, and a decision in favour of a re-invasion of the Falklands, Mr. Nicholas Winterton, the Conservative MP for Macclesfield. How many of you in the Conservative Party take this view?
I think the vast majority of the Conservative Parliamentary Party is in favour of the government honouring the objectives that it set itself when this crisis first burst upon us. That is, to get the Argentines to withdraw their military and civilian personnel from the islands, and for British administration to be restored to the Falkland Islands. And if, as quite clearly is the case, we have to use military force to do that, as the Rear Admiral has said, I believe the time now is ripe for action to be taken.
But now, say, Mr. Foote and the Labour Party, who have gone along with the idea of the task force, Mr. Foote and Mr. Healy, are calling now for another debate and for a 48-hour delay to give diplomacy a further chance. Now, are you pressing the Prime Minister too hard?
I don't think so. As Mrs. Thatcher, the Prime Minister, said earlier today, we have been negotiating at the United Nations for some 6 weeks. The Argentines have disdainfully ignored Security Council Resolution 502. We've considered and answered 6 different proposals relating to a ceasefire and an agreement with the Argentine, all to no avail. They have no intention whatsoever of withdrawing their forces from the Falkland Islands, and as a result, I believe it's inevitable we should use military force, and we should allow those in command of the task force to take the military decisions, and a 48-hour moratorium or whatever Mr. Foote requires is absolute nonsense, and clearly will give the Argentines just that little bit more time to plan for the inevitable invasion which must take place if the Security Council resolution is in fact to be honoured, and we ourselves, of course, can act in accordance with Article 51 in self-defence.
But do you not think that the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Pym, and indeed the British ambassador to the United Nations, have been counselling against such a precipitate action?
Well, I certainly wouldn't use the word precipitate action. I personally think that 6 weeks of negotiation is long enough. Clearly, we wanted a peaceful settlement, and we will still want a peaceful settlement. We will go on negotiating until the last moment. But as the Rear Admiral said, we have got to realise that winter is very nearly upon us in the South Atlantic. The conditions down there are deteriorating, and this will be to the advantage of the Argentine junta and the forces on the Falklands. We've obviously got to allow our military commanders down there to take the decisions that are necessary after all avenues of diplomacy have been fully exhausted.
But clearly Mr. Pym, your Foreign Secretary, doesn't think that they have been exhausted. His last statements appear to be that there still must be time for negotiation.
Well, all I can say is, how long is a piece of string? How long does he want to negotiate? We have been at the United Nations, as Mrs. Thatcher, I repeat, said earlier today, for 6 weeks this matter has dragged on. We are the aggrieved party. We were invaded. We have the sanction to take military operations in our own defence under Article 51 of the United Nations. That, I believe, we've got to do in order to remove the Argentine from the Falkland Islands and to restore British administration.
But do you think, therefore, that Mr. Pym himself should go? I mean, do you want a new Foreign Secretary?
I think that if Mr. Pym is not prepared to take the hard decision, as Mr. Powell said in the House of Commons last Thursday, there is an honourable course open to him. I don't wish him to take that action, and in some of the things that he said subsequent to his speech last Thursday, it is clear that he does appreciate there is a limit to the amount of negotiation. I believe we have absolutely exhausted negotiation, and now, at any time, the Prime Minister should be free to give the decision which is necessary in order to release the Falkland Islanders from the bondage of the Argentine administration.
But what would you do? I mean, would you attempt to bring Mrs. Thatcher down if, in fact, there were now to be a negotiated settlement at the United Nations?
If the negotiated settlement did not honour the two basic objectives that we set ourselves, I think I myself and a number of my colleagues who feel that there's tremendous principle at stake here about the upholding of international law, about the importance of the South Atlantic, about other countries being invaded by their over-greedy neighbours. I believe that if the objectives of getting the Argentines to withdraw and the restoration of British administration cannot be honoured, that people like myself will consider very seriously resigning the whip in the House of Commons.
How many people like yourself?
I would say there are 30 or 40, perhaps even more. And this transcends the right-left syndrome that many political commentators normally describe members under.
Thank you, Mr. Winton. And that is the choice that now faces Mrs. Thatcher, the military one, and the political one, and the diplomatic one. We shall know, obviously, very much more by tomorrow. That's the news and Falklands Extra tonight. Good night.
In a moment, the Thames News headlines, followed by tonight's drama documentary, Strike.
If you're looking for an easy way to sell your car, call Computacar. First, Computacar.
90388383. Even under such testing conditions, you can trust Sure for Men. The powerful new antiperspirant deodorant, specially for men. Sure for Men. Helps stop wetness, helps stop odor. Every time, every day, whatever you're doing. No nonsense, Sure for Men. It won't let you down.
Green, the natural colour of protection. The colour of new Duckhams Hypergrade. An oil so advanced it protects in all cars, all conditions, and at higher engine temperatures, even turbo temperatures. Duckhams Hypergrade, the birth of a new oil.
Since 1962, there have been some very special Cortinas. But none as special as this. The Great Crusader. Impressive livery, sumptuous interior, and impeccable pedigree make this car, from only £5,160, the ultimate special edition Cortina. See it, and see the legend live on in The Great Crusader.
Have a nice day.
You think the neck's looking at you?
Thank you.
After a business trip overseas,
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
only we British can welcome you home. We have the widest seats across the Atlantic, civilized service, and experienced crew.
Our flight this evening?
In club or super club.
Thanks.
Come home with British Airways.
This is the Martini time of day. Martini is anytime, any place, anywhere, because Martini is the right one.
Good evening. The Thames News headlines. An all-party committee of MPs seems set to recommend that the GLC be stripped of their responsibility of running London transport. It's believed the MPs favour the setting up of a new transport body controlled by the government. Detectives say they've had a fantastic response to a reconstruction today of the double murder near Aldershot a week ago. 2 policewomen posed as the victims who were stabbed as they walked their dogs. Leaders of striking dustmen in Wandsworth say that none of their men were involved in an arson attack on 6 dust carts used by the private company brought in to replace them. It's the 13th incident reported to police since the strike started 5 weeks ago. A 4-year-old girl was killed when a 5-a-side football post fell on her as she played with friends at Hertz Green in Surrey. And British Rail say trains in and out of Waterloo should be back to normal tomorrow after today's 24-hour strike by drivers protesting at new work rosters. A third of the total services were cancelled. But one train that did run, and with a famous face on board, actress Diana Dawes, who opened the newly renamed Alexander Palace Station. It used to be called Wood Green, but it's hoped the new name will make people more aware of the rail link to the new exhibition centre at Ali Pali. Thames weather overnight, warm and misty. Tomorrow, warm again with rain clearing. Top temperature 21 degrees centigrade, that's 70 Fahrenheit. That's it. Now on Thames, strike, the birth of solidarity.